Long story short, I never planned on driving that run. I was supposed to be in Denver watching my sister walk down the aisle, probably half drunk and crying like the rest of my family. But plans change when your bank account hits zero and your cousin calls offering $800 in cash for an emergency haul from Toledo to Billings. My name's Mitch Rojas, 34 and broke. My Tacoma had been repossessed 2 weeks ago, still sitting in a yard on the east side of town unless they crushed it already. Rent was 3 months behind. My landlord had stopped pretending to be polite, and to top it off, I was $2,400 in credit card debt, most of it from covering my ex's ER visit after she sliced her hand trying to open a wine bottle with a screwdriver. So yeah, when Jorge said he needed someone to take a refrigerated truck west, I didn't think twice. He said it'd be easy money, drop, drive, deliver. The usual lie. What he didn't say was the truck was a 2007 Freightliner with a check engine light that stayed on like it was glued there, or that I'd be driving through black ice warnings in a snow-dusted Midwest night. By the time I rolled out, it was nearly 9 p.m. I was already behind schedule because the meatpacking guys took 2 hours, arguing over load temps and paperwork. I told myself I'd drive through the night, maybe stop once for a piss and coffee. No hotels, no delays. I needed that wedding cash too badly. But around midnight, the dash started flickering, lights dimming, the radio cutting out, a faint whine in the steering column, the kind of thing you feel more than hear, the kind of thing that says this truck ain't gonna make it to Montana. So I pulled off somewhere near the Nebraska line. Nothing but dark fields and a flickering neon sign that read Cedar Ridge Motel and Truck Parking. Not a brand name. Not the kind of place you book online. Just there, waiting. I barely had enough strength left to step down from the cab. Snow crunched under my boots, thin and sharp like the ice didn't want to be touched. The sign overhead blinked. No vacancy in half-dead red letters, but the lot had empty slots and the office light was on, so I figured I'd try anyway. Inside, the lobby smelled like bleach and old gum. One of those vending machines that only sold knockoff sodas buzzed like a dying bug. Behind the desk was a wiry man with sunken cheeks dressed in layers of flannel. He looked like he'd been carved out of cigarette smoke and truck stop coffee. "Just need a spot to park," I said. "Maybe a restroom. Truck's acting up." The guy didn't smile, just pointed to a clipboard. "Fill that out. Don't matter. If you're staying or not, insurance makes us keep record." I scribbled down my info, fake address, burner phone, and handed it back. He took it like he didn't care either way. As I turned to leave, he asked, "That your reefer unit out there?" I froze. Not truck, not Freightliner. He said reefer unit. That's not something a regular motel clerk says, not unless he knows. Something, or someone told him. "Yeah," I said slowly. "How'd you know?" He didn't answer. Just smirked and went back to watching the tiny TV behind the counter. Some static-filled infomercial for a garden hose or something. I made it, out to the vending area, which doubled as a laundry closet. It smelled like microwave burritos and ammonia. That's when I saw him, a man in a dirty Carhartt jacket leaning against the ice machine, one boot resting on the rim of a bucket. "That your reefer unit?" he asked. Same words, same cadence. I felt every hair on my neck stand up. I hadn't mentioned the truck to anyone but the clerk, and even then, barely. The guy's breath smelled like cloves and gasoline, like someone who didn't sleep, or didn't have to. I didn't answer. Just muttered something and walked back toward my cab. I didn't sleep that night. By the time I hit I-80 again, it was pushing 1:45 a.m. The caffeine pills I popped at the Petro in Cheyenne were starting to make my vision jitter, but the truck was running and I had a full tank. I kept telling myself the guy at the motel was just some weirdo, maybe another driver. Maybe high, maybe drunk. But then I saw it. At a gas station just across the Wyoming line, as I leaned over to dump more pills into a Mountain Dew, I looked up, and there it was. The same rusted Silverado from the motel lot, parked just off to the side, empty. Or so I thought. The man was there, crouched beside the passenger door, holding one of those telescoping mirrors you see repo guys use when They're trying to check a VIN number without getting out. He angled it toward my truck, then toward me. I stepped back, heart thumping like bass in a tin can. He stood up slow, like he wanted me to see him. Then he called over, voice calm. "Electrical issues?" I didn't answer. "Could check your terminals," he said. "Looks like a grounding fault." I got in the cab and locked the doors. As I pulled away, I watched him shrink in the side mirror, just standing there, holding that mirror like it was a damn badge. I didn't stop again, not until the dash went completely dark. Somewhere north of Wheatland, the headlights cut out. Dashboard, dead. No GPS, no RPM. Nothing but engine noise and the white noise of my own breath. I slammed the area beneath the steering wheel with my fist. Everything flickered back to life like it had never stopped. But in my rear view, there were headlights. Exactly, a quarter-mile back. Not gaining, not fading, just pacing me, like someone waiting for me to screw up. That's when I knew this wasn't about the truck. Someone was following me, and they knew what they wanted. At 4:02 a.m., I pulled into a Sinclair rest stop just off I-25. There was a Wyoming state trooper parked beside the bathroom building, engine idling, sipping coffee. I parked 3 slots down and got out, pretending like I just needed to stretch my legs. The officer nodded at me. "Cold one." "Yeah," I said, "real cold." I stayed out there for 10 minutes pretending to use the vending machine, just watching the road. But when I looked back to my truck, something was off. The Silverado was gone. I rushed over to the trailer. The snow under my boots was barely touched. No, fresh tracks. But something was wrong. The emergency brake air line dangling from the trailer was cut. A clean slice, straight through the red Gladhen line. No air pressure, no stopping if things got steep. If I hadn't pulled in here, there, under my windshield wiper, was a business card. High Plains Recovery Services. We find what's owed. No, phone number. Just an address in Greeley, Colorado. I showed the brake line to the trooper. He shrugged, wrote it up as vandalism, said he'd file a report. Didn't look concerned. Didn't even ask if I wanted to stick around for a tow. When I called my cousin Jorge to tell him what happened, he just said, "Shit happens, primo. Can you still deliver?" I almost laughed. Almost. But I kept driving. Because at that point, I knew this wasn't just about a job anymore. This was personal. The delivery made it to Billings. The dispatcher wired the money same day, just like he said he would. I missed my sister's wedding. Never even saw the photos. 3 weeks later, I found a repo order stuffed in my cousin's glove box, backdated and forged with his signature. It was for a different load, but the destination was the same. So was the make and model of the truck. I asked Jorge about it. He got quiet, said something about guys he used to know before he left the call hanging. That same week, I found a manila envelope taped to my apartment door. Inside were photos of my building taken from across the street. Daylight, night, zoomed in on my windows. No note, no return address. Just before I blocked the number, I saw a missed call from a Denver area code, same night as the wedding, 2:17 a.m. I stopped taking western routes after that, started driving shorter, safer hauls, Ohio to Pennsylvania, maybe down to Kentucky, because when you owe the wrong people money, the debt doesn't always show up on paper. Sometimes, it shows up in the rear view, waiting. I never planned on working graveyard at a place like the Starlight. Hell, I used to hang drywall in Phoenix, union gigs, decent pay, got to use my hands. But after my second DUI, the license was gone. So were the job calls. Couldn't blame them. No contractor wants a guy with 2 strikes showing up late, sweating out Coors Light and court dates. Then came the custody hearing. My little girl, Sophia, is 5. Her mom, Carla, lives just outside Mesa. Judge said I could have visitation if I showed steady income. That was laughable at the time. I was crashing on my cousin's couch in Gallup, doing day labor when I could. Then someone told me about Ray. The Starlight Motel sits just off Highway 87. wedged between a Love's truck stop and a pawn shop with broken neon. It's a relic from the 60s, back when people still took road trips and didn't mind cigarette burns in the bed sheets. Ray owns it outright, lives on site in room 1, pays cash under the table, doesn't ask about your record. He gave me the night shift. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Said it was easy money. Hand out keys, keep the coffee fresh, and make sure the hookers don't trash the place. I didn't care. It was a roof and enough to wire Carla $100 a week for Sophia. Most nights were quiet, if depressing. A few truckers, tweakers with fake names, the occasional screaming match in room 3 or 6. I kept to myself. I cleaned when I felt like it. Read old paperbacks from the free shelf by the front desk. No one ever came looking for trouble. Until the night of the fire. Until room 9. It was cold as hell that night. November desert cold. The kind that cuts through your jacket like it's nothing. I was microwaving leftover tamales in the office when the fire alarm went off. Not the whole system, just the smoke detector in one room. Room 9. I grabbed the extinguisher and sprinted down the outside walkway, my boots slapping against frozen concrete. I didn't expect much. Probably someone lit up a joint too close to the curtain again. But the door was busted open, kicked in from the inside. The handle bent, splinters hanging off the frame. Inside, everything smelled like burning. Plastic and dryer sheets. I pushed in, holding the extinguisher like a bat. The fire wasn't in the bed or the curtains, it was in the bathtub. A smoldering pile of children's clothes. Pink leggings, a frozen t-shirt, little light-up sneakers melted halfway through. The rubber. Above it all, taped to the yellow tile walls, were drawings. Dozens of them. Scribbled with crayon and Sharpie on Motel stationery. A stick figure family, mom, kid, and a dad with his face scribbled out. Another, a house burning, black windows and red flames. One just said, "Help us," in blocky, crooked letters. No sign of a kid. No smell of flesh. Just smoke, half melted, toys, and the sharp taste of panic in the back of my throat. I killed the fire and called Ray. He showed up 5 minutes later, half-dressed and fully pissed. Told me to clean it up before any other guests saw. I told him to call the cops. He said, "If you do, you're the one they're gonna ask about children in bathtubs, cabron." I didn't listen. I called 911 from my cell outside the gate. When the cops came, they took photos. Collected the clothes and the drawings. Wrote it up as suspicious activity. But they didn't find a kid. No blood, no prints. Nothing on the registry about a child. Room 9 had been rented that night to a trucker named Dean Holloway, but when they checked the plates, nothing came up. I kept working the desk, but nothing felt right after that night. Room 9 was sealed off, supposedly for repairs. Ray told me if I ever mentioned the fire to anyone, he'd find someone hungrier. He didn't have to threaten me twice. I needed the job, needed to keep sending money to Carla so she wouldn't. Cut me out of Sophia's life, but I couldn't shake it. The drawings haunted me, not just because they were weird, but because one of them looked exactly like Sophia's art. She's obsessed with Frozen too. I've still got one of her crayon stick figures taped to the inside of my wallet. Same shaky lines, same way of drawing. Hands, little spiky fingers. The next night I checked the guest registry again. Same name, Dean Holloway, New Mexico plate. He paid cash, no ID copy. That was normal around here, but something felt off. I tried to Google him. No social media, no business listing, no commercial license under that name. So I checked trucking databases, dot logs, delivery registries. Nothing. That's when the phone call came. Blocked number. Phoenix area code. I answered, thinking it might be Carla, a man's voice. Low. Calm. No accent. Stop asking questions about that room. I didn't say anything. He hung up. I called Carla. She was pissed I woke her. Swore she didn't make any call. Checked her phone log. She was asleep. Alone. That was it for me. I packed up my stuff in the back room. Left Ray a note that just said, "Can't do this anymore." He never called. Probably figured I wasn't worth the trouble. But I still think about that drawing. The frozen shirt. The fire set like someone was trying to burn a memory away or hide evidence. Somebody had been in that room with a kid, and that somebody wanted me to forget it. After I left the Starlight, I tried to move on. Took a job pumping gas in Grants, kept sending money to Carla. Even got to do a supervised visit with Sophia, watched her build a glitter castle out of Play-Doh like nothing bad had ever happened anywhere in the world. But room 9 stuck with me. So I started asking around, quietly, on my own time. I posted about Dean Holloway on a trucker forum under a fake name. Got some bites, mostly trolls. Then one guy messaged me privately, said Holloway was an alias, said he'd heard that name in a case out of Texas 5 years back. Something about missing kids in a burned-out trailer near Abilene. Nothing ever proven, no arrests, just whispers. I went back to Gallup for one night, sat across the street from the Starlight in my truck. Ray had replaced the door on room 9, painted it blue. Looked like nothing ever happened. But something did. I walked into the diner next door and showed the waitress a drawing I still had a photo of. The black house with red flames. She looked at it and froze. I saw a girl drawing something like that in here last fall, she said. Little, quiet, white kid, maybe 6, with some guy in a trucker cap. She remembered the man. Said he paid in cash, didn't talk, just stared out the window while the girl colored. I asked if she'd told anyone. She shook her head. Didn't seem right. But I didn't want to get involved. That's the thing about places like Gallup. People don't want to get involved. And when they do, it's usually too late. I called the cops again, gave them everything. The name, the drawing, the phone call. The waitress's tip. They never called me back. Now every time I stop at a truck stop, I look at the missing kid posters near the bathrooms. You'd be surprised how many there are. Blurry school photos, birth dates, last seen locations. Most from big cities, some from right down the highway. I don't know if the girl from room 9 is there. I don't even know if she's real. But something burned in that bathtub. And someone made sure I'd be the only one who cared. Sometimes I think about going full-time into tracking this stuff down, like those YouTube guys who solve cold cases in their garages. But I've got enough ghosts already. I just keep an eye out, take pictures, ask questions when I can. Carla doesn't know about room 9. I don't tell her. Sophia's safe and that's what matters. But sometimes when I call her, I listen to anything strange in the background. Static, breathing, silence that feels off. I still have that voicemail saved, the one that said, "Stop asking questions." I play it every now and then, trying to hear something behind the voice, a sound, a truck engine, a child. But all I hear is fire. I didn't plan on staying in Van Horn more than a week. Thought I'd make some cash and head west, maybe get on one of the rigs outside Pecos. But oil slowed down again, just like last year. No one was hiring, and my ex in El Paso was threatening to block my visits with Sophia unless I made a payment. Said I had until the end of the month. So when I saw Rudy's handwritten help wanted sign in the Sundown Inn office window, I walked in. Guy was about 60, wore a bolo tie and a pistol on his hip like it was still 1983. Didn't care about my misdemeanor from 2018, breaking and entering. Nothing violent, just me being drunk and stupid. Rudy looked at me, nodded once and said, "You want nights? I pay cash, don't ask questions." I said sure. The Sundown's the kind of place where the beds squeak if you breathe wrong and the vending machines sell RC Cola from the Bush era. It sits just off 285 where the trucks rumble through all night, but no one really stops unless they're desperate. The night shift was easy. Desk work, gave out keys, cleaned out the ashtrays in the smoker rooms, drank bad coffee and watched reruns on the busted TV behind the front desk. Mostly truckers, sometimes tweakers. Every now and then a nervous couple checking in under fake names. I didn't care. Rudy made it clear, don't call the cops, don't ask for IDs if they pay in cash, and keep your head down. It worked fine. Until the guy showed up asking for room 17, big guy, sweat-stained hat, Bandage over one eye like he'd been in a fight, or worse. Gave the name Jim Dawson, paid for the whole week in bills that smelled like diesel. Said he didn't want housekeeping, wanted a room that faced the back lot. Asked if we had any cameras. I lied and said yes. He didn't smile. Just dragged a heavy black duffel into room 17 and locked the door behind him. The next night started off normal. One trucker from Amarillo, two teenagers clearly high out of their minds, and a family whose AC had died somewhere past Marfa. I checked them all in, counted the drawer twice, and killed time watching dust collect on the front desk fan. Then, at 2:16 a.m., the smoke alarm in room 17 went off. It wasn't the old kind that chirps from bad batteries. It was shrill, angry. I grabbed the master key and fire extinguisher and jogged down the walkway. Desert wind blowing hot across the parking lot, like opening an oven. I knew something was wrong the second I reached the door. It wasn't just open. It had been kicked from the inside. Hinges cracked, paint flaked off where the frame had split. Inside, smelled like burnt plastic and singed hair. The fire was already dying in the sink, a pile of passport, half charred and still smoking. I grabbed the extinguisher and put out what was left. The names were all different, German, Honduran, a couple with Arabic script. But the photo? Every single one showed the same teenage boy. Brown eyes, buzzed hair, blank stare. I looked up. On the wall above the bed were maps, hand-drawn and pinned to the wallpaper with thumbtacks. Red circles over stretches of desert outside Sierra Blanca. One had safe drop, scrawled in pencil. Another just said, "Tell Rosa I'm sorry," in all caps, written in bar soap on the bathroom mirror. I stepped outside and called the sheriff. By the time the deputies rolled in, room 17 was empty. Jim Dawson was gone. No sign of the duffel. Just burned passports, maps, and that apology in soap. They bagged what was left, took my statement, and told me to let them handle it. The younger deputy looked at me like he wanted to say something. Instead, he just asked if we had security footage. I told him the truth. The cameras haven't worked in 6 years. He wrote that down. They left before sunrise. Rudy showed up at 7, saw the broken door, and asked if I'd been snooping where I shouldn't. I wasn't going to poke around anymore. I'm not a hero and I'm not stupid. But that night I didn't sleep. Something about the kid's face wouldn't leave me. I couldn't guess his age, maybe 14. I'd seen that blank look before, the one where a kid's already seen too much and figured no one was coming to help. I came in the next night like nothing happened. Just tried to keep my head down. At 1:03 a.m. the motel phone rang, not the front desk line, the old house line in the back room, the one Rudy swore no one used anymore. I picked it up. "You the clerk who found those papers?" Woman's voice, Hispanic. Sounded like she was crying but trying not to let it show. I didn't answer right away. Something in my gut told me this wasn't a normal call. Then she said, "Don't look in room 12 ceiling, and quit while you still can. Click deadline." I stood there for a minute just listening to the dial tone, cold sweat sticking to my back. Room 12 hadn't been used all week. I knew that because it smelled like dead lizards, and the AC unit was half pulled out from the wall. Rudy said he was going to fix it, but never did. I stared at the logbook. There was no record of anyone staying there since June, but someone knew that room. Knew I'd found something, knew who I was. I didn't sleep after that. I didn't quit either. Maybe I should have, but curiosity's like rust. It spreads before you notice. And something in her voice made me feel like if I didn't check room 12, I'd always wonder what was up there. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I grabbed a flashlight and a screwdriver, and I went into room 12. Room 12 smelled like roaches and heat stroke. The AC hung halfway out the wall like it was trying to escape. I stood on a cracked plastic chair and popped the ceiling vent. I wish I hadn't. Inside was a blood-crusted hunting knife, duct-taped to the metal ductwork. Next to it, a Polaroid, bent and faded. A teenage boy, same as the passports, tied to a motel chair. His mouth duct-taped, eyes red. This motel, same drapes, same puke-green walls. And stuck to the back of the photo was a Dallas Cowboys keychain, same one my nephew carried since he was 10. I nearly dropped the whole vent cover. My hands shook. My head felt like it was full of sand. I stuffed it all into a trash bag and drove it to the sheriff's office myself. Told them everything. Showed them the photo. Gave them the knife, the keychain, even the piece of bar soap I'd taken from room 17. They took it all. Asked me to sign a statement. Then the older deputy leaned in close and said, "Travis, best thing you can do now is forget this. Folks who do this don't like being found." I asked if they were going to look into it. He didn't answer. Just said I should stay in my lane. I drove back to the motel at noon. Rudy was waiting, outside with my last pay in a paper envelope. "Too many questions," he said. "You're fired. No severance. No explanation. Just me. The heat and the sound of the broken ice machine humming like it was dying." I left Van Horn that night. Packed everything I owned in my beat-up Dodge and headed west. Didn't say goodbye to Rudy. Didn't tell my ex. But 2 days later, she called me, said men had come around her place asking for me. Said they wore button-downs and had kind eyes, but knew Sophia's school schedule. That broke something in me. Now I move around. Don't stay anywhere more than a month. Gas station shifts, warehouse nights, never anything with cameras. Never anything that ties me down. But every time I walk through a motel lobby, I look for black duffels. The kind you can't hear what's inside. The kind that smells like metal and sweat. If I see one, I walk the other way. Sometimes when I stop for gas, I check the missing persons posters. Not for the kid, for my nephew. Haven't seen him since he ran away last year. Would have been 16 now. I think about that cowboy's keychain. Wonder if it was his. Wonder if he got caught up in something too big, too quiet, and too well paid to ever make the news. Whatever was happening at the Sundown Inn wasn't just one guy, and I wasn't supposed to see it, but I did. And the worst part, I think I was supposed to forget. I never meant to end up alone at a crumbling roadside inn, checking in tired truckers and sweeping cigarette ash off tile floors from the Franco era. But life doesn't care what you meant. I graduated from the Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha with a degree in tourism and hospitality, useless out here in the olive groves and sunburnt plains of Ciudad Real. The only thing it qualified me for was seasonal work in Toledo or Madrid, and I couldn't leave. My mother's cancer was too advanced, the trips to Hospital General too frequent, and the bills impossible to keep up with. So I stayed. Took care of her during the day and worked the night shift at Posada del Silencio, a half-dead inn off Carretera CM 410 surrounded by nothing but fields, silence, and old ghost stories. The owner, Don Ernesto, was a chain-smoking relic with liver spots and cheap cologne. He paid cash and didn't ask questions. He knew I cried in the storage room between midnight and 2. Never said a word. Most nights were quiet, a few truckers, sometimes couples who didn't want their license plates on camera. Occasionally, long-haul drivers in their 50s who called me guapa and smelled like cured meats and motor oil. But it was easy money. Nothing ever happened. Until November 7th when he arrived. The man wore a dusty leather jacket and carried no luggage, just a paperback novel tucked under one arm and a quiet, dead look in his eyes. He gave the name Enrique Vasquez, handed me cash for 2 weeks, and asked for the quietest room. Habitation 7. There was something about him that made me cold, even before the wind slipped through the broken lobby door and whistled like a whisper from the olive groves outside. He never smiled, just looked at me once, really looked, and said, "No housekeeping, please." Then he walked down the tiled hall and closed the door behind him. Room 7 had always felt wrong. It was cold even in July. The radiator rattled like teeth. One housekeeper refused to clean it, saying the walls gave her headaches. I never told Enrique that. Not that he'd care. Every night, I brought him a tray. Bread, jam, a thermos, of coffee. Every morning I found it untouched, neatly placed outside his door. Not a crumb missing, not a fingerprint on the glass. By the 4th day, I stopped knocking. Just left the tray, walked away. What unsettled me wasn't that he didn't eat. It was what I did hear. Scraping, faint and rhythmic, between 3 and 3:30 a.m. Not loud enough to wake guests, but enough to freeze me where I stood behind the front desk, like furniture being dragged across concrete, over and over again. Once I pressed my ear to room 7's door. The air smelled like old coins. Metallic, sour, and wrong. When I told Don Ernesto, he shrugged. If he's paying, he can dance naked in there, so I said nothing. I didn't need more drama. I needed money. The next hospital bill was overdue, and Mama had started hiding the pain pills to make them last, but I started to notice little things. Smudges. On the hallway walls, dark, greasy streaks, footprints in the dust outside room 7's window even, though the ground was dry and no one ever came in through the back. Then came the 13th night, November 20th. I walked down the hall with the tray like always, but the door to room 7 was ajar, not wide open, just enough to show the room, was dark and still. I pushed gently. "Señor Vasquez?" I called. No answer, no movement. Inside, the room looked undisturbed. Bed made, curtains drawn, no duffel, no toothbrush, no clothes. Just the novel, La Sombra del Viento, closed on the nightstand with a dried olive branch tucked between the pages and the faint smell of blood. The silence inside room 7 felt dense, heavy, like the air itself didn't want to move. I stood in the doorway for almost a full minute waiting to hear something. Anything, but nothing came. I stepped inside, hesitantly. The floor creaked, and I swear the sound didn't echo right, like the room swallowed it whole. I didn't touch anything. Just checked the wardrobe in the tiny bathroom. Empty. Then I saw it. A damp patch near the back wall, hidden just behind the armoire. The wallpaper there was already peeling from the humidity, but something about the spot made me reach out. It felt soft. Wrong. I moved the wardrobe aside. Behind it, the wall had been patched badly, with what looked like duct tape and thin drywall. Dark liquid oozed through the seams. The stench hit me immediately. Rot, iron, and something else. Something sweet and decaying, like old meat left in the sun. I should have run. Instead, I peeled it back. There was a compartment, no bigger than a suitcase. Inside, wrapped in a soaked Real Madrid jersey, was what at first looked like a mannequin's hand, pale, still. Then I saw the ring, silver, engraved. Siempre contigo. The same ring Enrique wore on his left hand. I stumbled back, hit the nightstand, and the book fell open. The olive branch fluttered to the floor, landing right beside something small. A strand of long black hair tangled around a button with dried blood on it. That's when I called the Guardia Civil. They arrived, 2 hours later, sleepy and skeptical. But when they opened the wall fully and saw what was inside, the hand, the jersey, the partial jawbone, their faces changed. An hour later, they matched the fingerprints to Marina Ruiz, a missing waitress from Valdepeñas. I was told to wait, to give a statement that the name Enrique Vasquez was fake. The ID he gave had belonged to a man who died in Cordoba 6 months earlier. But I already knew what they were going to say. I stayed up all night answering questions. They brought in forensics, took my fingerprints, asked if I knew Enrique's real name. I told them I didn't. I told them everything I saw. They nodded a lot, but I could tell they didn't believe me. They kept circling back to the same questions. How long did you say he stayed? You never saw him leave? You sure you didn't make this up for attention? I showed them the registry, his name, his signature, but the paper was missing, torn from the book. Just a jagged edge where his line used to be. They checked the CCTV. The camera that covered the hallway? Dead. Ernesto said it had been broken for months. The one by the entrance? Footage wiped from the last 2 weeks. They finally left around noon. I slept 2 hours, woke up to Ernesto's knock. He didn't even come in. You brought trouble here, he said. You brought police. You made a mess. and you scared off the few guests we had." I tried to explain. He didn't care. "I'll pay you for the week." "But you're done, Lucia." And that was that. I packed my things and walked out. The wind was dry and sharp, pushing dust across the empty parking lot. The neon sign flickered, once then died. No apology, no answers, just the memory of that ring, that hand, that smell. A week later, I saw a photo of Marina Ruiz online. She looked just like me. Same hair, same build, same timid smile. I wondered if he picked her because of that, or if it meant I'd been next. I haven't slept a full night since. Live in Toledo now. Share a small flat with a nurse I barely know. I work mornings at a bakery, nights at a late shift call center. No one asks questions, but every now and then I think I hear scraping. Quiet, rhythmic, far off. In my sleep, in the walls. I don't talk about Posada del Silencio anymore. No one believes me. Maybe I don't either. But every time I pass a rural inn off a lonely highway, I feel it. The stillness, the smell, the air that doesn't move. And I check the walls, behind furniture, inside vents. Just in case, because somewhere out there another man with no past is checking in under a new name, carrying a novel, wearing someone else's ring, and some desperate girl like me is handing him a key, grateful just to have a job, too tired to. Ask what's behind the silence, I hope she asks. I hope she runs because ghosts aren't the scariest thing hiding in old roadside inns. The living are. We came to Barstow because we had nowhere else to go. It was August 1999. I was 12, Tito was 14, and Manny was 9. We'd just been thrown out of my aunt's place in Bakersfield. Ray, our stepdad, had stolen her Vicodin and pawned, her microwave. She screamed at us from the driveway while we loaded into his rust-bitten El Camino. By the time we hit Route 66, the car was running on fumes, and so were we. Ray pulled into the Sundown Rest, a sun-faded motel with peeling paint, busted neon, and a dead pool filled with beer cans and black leaves. Chester, the guy at the desk, had teeth like corn kernels and a voice like sandpaper. He gave us room 9 for $35 a night. "No noise," he said. "No kids in the room during the day." Ray nodded and lit a cigarette in the lobby. So from 9 to 6 every day we were out. No shade, no TV, no air conditioning. Just us, the cracked parking lot, and the sun. We'd try to hide behind the ice machine, but it barely worked. It hummed like it was about to die. The vending machine only spat out warm cans of Dr. Pepper. I remember once we tried to make a game of counting dead things. Birds, bugs, something that might have been a possum once. That's the kind of thing you do when you're locked out of your own life. At night, the desert turned into a different kind of prison. Trains rolled past in the distance, and Ray snored with the TV on, his arm thrown across Lupe, our mom. She barely talked anymore. She had a look in her eyes like she was watching a slow leak in her own soul. We never talked about the future because no one had one. The motel smelled like mildew and cigarettes and sun-baked misery. But then Daisy showed up. And for a little, while things felt less heavy, Daisy lived in room 11 with her dad, a long-haul trucker. He was gone 5 days a week, sometimes more. She was 13 and had that wiry, sun-dried look of a kid who learned early not to rely on anyone. We met because she caught me trying to get the soda machine to spit out a free can by shaking it. She walked up, flipped open the access panel with a paperclip and popped one out like a pro. "Warm," she said, handing it over, "but it's still sugar." She showed me where the scorpions hid under the busted AC units, and how the empty pool echoed if you shouted into it just right. She said a woman got stabbed in room 7 back in '87 and showed me the faint brown stain in the carpet like it was a secret treasure. I don't know what Daisy saw in me. Maybe we were both just bored. Maybe she knew I wasn't like Tito, who was always angry, or Manny, who still cried sometimes when Ray yelled. I was quiet. I listened. One day she found a stack of Motel Bibles in the dumpster. "Look," she said, "someone wrote your name." I thought it was a joke, but there it was. My name, scribbled in shaky handwriting in the margins of at least 3 of them. It creeped me out. but Daisy just laughed. We never talked about our parents. I never asked where her mom was, and she never asked about Ray. Some stuff you don't say out loud. She made the motel feel less like a waiting room for hell. When we were together, time didn't hang so heavy. But all that came apart on day 17. I knocked like always. The door creaked open, but it wasn't Daisy. The woman standing there looked like something out of a hospital movie. Thin, pale, her hair tangled and dry. Her nightgown hung off her like it didn't belong. Her eyes locked on me, wide and unblinking. "You're the one from my dreams," she said. "The boy who shines." Before I could move, she grabbed my wrist. Her nails were yellow and sharp. She yanked me into the room so fast I stumbled. My head hit the wall and my ears rang. "They'll never let you leave the desert," she whispered. "But I can save you." I was frozen. I couldn't scream. I don't know if it was fear or disbelief. Her breath smelled like old milk and her grip was iron. Then came the bang. The door flew open and Daisy's dad charged in, shirtless and furious, swinging a tire iron. The woman let go, hissed, and bolted out the back. The cops found her in the dumpster behind the ice machine, rocking and clutching, a bundle of motel Bibles. My name was written in almost every one. They said her name was Clarice. She'd escaped from Patton State Hospital 11 days before. Paranoid delusions, Capgras syndrome. Thought people had been replaced. The paramedics checked me out. I was okay. No bruises except where she grabbed me. Ray didn't care. That night, he slapped me hard across the face and said, "You bring trouble, you deal with it." Then we packed up and left. No goodbyes, not even to Daisy. We kept moving after that. Needles, then Victorville, then East LA. I don't remember much of the next year, just that it felt like living underwater. Tito started skipping school. Manny got quieter. Lupe barely spoke unless Ray forced her. I didn't tell anyone about the Bibles, about what she said, but I couldn't forget it. I started flinching when people touched me, started checking under beds, inside closets. I'd lie awake imagining her face, the way her eyes seemed to burn with something awful and pure. Not hate, something else, like she believed what she was saying. It wasn't just fear, it was confusion. How did she know my name? What had she seen in me? Was it all coincidence? A hallucination? I wanted answers, but there were none. Just silence and the long grind of days. I started reading about mental illness. At the library, at school when I could. Capgras delusion, paranoia, psychosis. None of it helped me sleep better. When I turned 18, I left. I didn't say goodbye to Ray. I think he was glad. I moved to Phoenix, got certified as an EMT. I figured if I was going to be stuck with these memories, maybe I could use them to help people worse off than me. I've been to car crashes, overdoses, suicides. I've zipped up body bags and held the hands of strangers bleeding in the street. And still, some nights I check the closet before bed. And sometimes when the wind hits just right through the city, I hear her voice again. "You still shine." Barstow's just a name on a map now, but it never left me. The desert doesn't let go of people easy. It dries you out, hollows you until there's not much left but bone and memory. I've been back once. Not to the sundown rest. It's gone, now replaced by a tire shop and a fenced lot full of broken appliances. But I drove past where it was, pulled over, got out. It was silent. No trains, no wind, just the hum of heat. I stood there until my shirt stuck to my back with sweat. And I swear, I don't care if it sounds crazy, I swear I smelled that old pool water and cigarettes again. That summer shaped everything, not just because of Clarice, but because of Ray, because of the silence in my mom's eyes, because of the feeling that I never got to just be a kid. Sometimes I think Daisy saved me, in her own weird way. She reminded me I was still there, still real. I tell myself I don't believe in anything now, not ghosts, not dreams. But then I hear it again, in the quiet. You still shine, and I don't know if it's a blessing or a warning. I didn't think I'd end up in a place like the Lotus Inn. But looking back, it makes sense. I wasn't sleeping, barely eating. My job at the call center downtown was a dead-end grind of troubleshooting routers for people who didn't even know what Wi-Fi meant. I'd moved to Bangkok 2 years ago from Da Nang, chasing a salary I could send home. But instead, I was just drowning quietly in a city that didn't care if I sank. I lived in a one-room flat above a tailor shop. Mold crawled up the walls like vines, and the mattress was thin enough to feel the boards beneath. Every call from my parents was a reminder of what I hadn't become. No wife, no kids, no future. Just an empty bed and silence thick enough to choke on. I was 24 and still a virgin. Not that it mattered to anyone but me and the voice in my head that wouldn't shut up. It was one of those nights, the kind where the rain won't stop and neither do your thoughts, when I found the ad. A woman named Lena. Her profile was vague. Pretty, kind smile. It didn't scream scam, but it didn't feel right either. Still, something pulled at me. Not lust, not exactly. Just the idea that maybe someone could see me, even if I had to pay for it. The address came in a private message. Lotus Inn, Soy 12, ask for room 12. A small place near the riverside. No online presence, no photos. I hesitated. But shame is a quiet kind of fire. It burns slow until you're moving without thinking. The taxi dropped me off at the mouth of the alley. Neon buzzed overhead, casting green and pink reflections onto puddles slick with oil. The sign for the motel flickered like it was trying to disappear. A couple of strays scattered as I stepped closer. Inside, the air was damp and hot. The lobby was empty except for the clerk, a thin man in a stained shirt who didn't ask questions when I handed over the money. He just handed me a rusted key. Room 12. Room 12 was up a narrow flight of stairs. The carpet squished under my shoes, damp from years of leaks and footsteps. The hallway was too quiet. I knocked once, then twice. No answer. I turned to leave, but then the door creaked open. A woman stood in the shadowed frame. Not Lena, she was older, maybe late 40s, with smooth skin that looked pulled too tight across her cheeks. Heavy makeup masked something tired beneath her eyes. "You must be Kiet," she said, her voice smooth like silk caught on glass. "I'm Madame Voronay." I tried to stammer a response, but she was already ushering me inside. The room smelled like jasmine and something metallic. The light flickered above the bed. There was no window, just a mirror mounted crooked above a dresser and a curtain hiding something in the corner. "I'm afraid Lena's busy," she said, closing the door behind her with a firm click. "But we have other options. Girls more your speed." She stepped closer, and that's when I saw it. Her fingernails were stained dark red. Not polish, something else. She reached out, touched my wrist, and her grip was strong. Too strong. "You're lucky, Kiet," she whispered. "Some people wait forever for a night like this." My chest tightened. The air felt heavier, thick like molasses. Something was off, more than off. Wrong. The way she looked at me, like she knew me, like she owned me. I muttered an excuse, something about needing to use the bathroom. She smiled but didn't move. That's when I heard it. A whimper. Soft. Behind the curtain. My stomach turned. My feet moved before my brain did. I pushed, past her and bolted, down the stairs through the lobby. The clerk didn't even blink as I shoved open the door. But I saw him, leading a girl down the hall. She couldn't have been older than 16. Her eyes were blank, her steps slow. I ran into the street, rain hammering my face, trying to breathe, trying to believe I hadn't just seen what I saw. But I knew. Something terrible was happening inside that motel. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the girl. The way her hand brushed the wall as she walked, like she was searching for something to hold on to. The next day I reported it. Walked right into the Bangkok police station, heart pounding, palms sweaty, and told them everything. The officer behind the glass listened with half-closed eyes, nodded slowly, took notes, but something in his expression felt tired, like he'd heard this before. "We'll look into it," he said. I waited a week. Nothing. Then suddenly it was all over the news. Lotus Inn raided. Dozens of girls pulled from tiny locked rooms. Drugs, cameras, passports. But Madame Voronay? Gone. So was the clerk. The place was shut down, but the real sickness had slipped away. For a moment I felt relief. I'd done something. Maybe even saved someone. But then the messages started. The first was a photo of my building taken from the alley below. Then a text. "Room 2 is waiting for you, Keith." No number. No reply. I tried to brush it off. Told myself it was a prank, maybe someone from the forum, but it didn't stop. Every night around 3 a.m. my phone would buzz. No ring, just a message. "You left too soon." Lena didn't get to say hello. I changed numbers, bought a new SIM card, but it didn't matter. Then came the dream, if it was a dream. I woke, up in bed, paralyzed. Couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Just stared as a shadow moved across the foot of the bed, a woman's silhouette. When I finally sat up, I was alone. But the smell of jasmine hung in the air, and on the edge of the mirror, a single fingerprint. Red. My world unraveled quickly after that. The HR rep at work pulled me into a meeting, said they'd received anonymous complaints, inappropriate behavior, moral concerns, no investigation, just a final paycheck. Then my father called. He'd heard rumors, said I'd shamed the family, that I wasn't his son anymore. My mother cried in the background but never spoke. The apartment started to feel smaller. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow outside the window, it all felt like a message, like someone was waiting, watching. I started seeing her. Not clearly, just flashes, reflections in glass, a shape ducking into a corner store as I passed. That same sharp smile, like she was enjoying the chase. I kept the lights on at night, slept in clothes, knife under the pillow. It didn't help. One night, I came home and found my door slightly open. I live alone. Always lock it. Always. I stood there for an hour, heart beating in my throat before I walked in. Everything was in place except one thing. On the floor, near the mirror, a room key. Lotus Inn. Room 2. The police didn't believe me, said I was paranoid. Maybe I was. My anxiety meds made me feel disconnected, foggy. But the fear was real. The scent of jasmine still haunted my clothes. I looked up the girls rescued from the raid. No Lena, no Voronay. It's like they were never there. I started to wonder if I'd imagined it all, but that didn't explain the messages, the key, the way I sometimes woke up with dirt under my nails, like I'd gone somewhere in my sleep, somewhere I didn't come back from entirely. It's been 6 weeks since I stepped into the Lotus Inn. I quit answering my phone, moved to a new building, no social media, no contact with home. I thought maybe if I disappeared, they'd stop looking, but I was wrong. Tonight, the rain's coming down like it did that night. Heavy, relentless. The city hums around me, neon bleeding into the windows. I'm sitting at my desk staring at the room key, still on my dresser. I should have thrown it out. I don't even hear the first knock. It's so soft. I think it's the wind. Then again, slightly louder. I freeze. My body knows before my mind. Someone's outside my door. I creep forward every step electric. I look through the peephole. Nothing. But then from the hallway, "You left too soon, Keith." A woman's voice. Gentle. Familiar. "Lena wants to meet you properly this time." The knob turns. Slowly. Deliberate. I back away. My phone's in my hand, but my fingers won't move. The door creaks. A shadow steps inside. She smiles. And suddenly, I understand. You don't leave room 2. Room 2 leaves with you.